he appears today. He's charged with second-degree murder. You don't think that that charge is strong enough. What evidence do you think there is that this is first-degree murder?
Well, Susanna, when you look at the facts of this case, now that we have the police body cam audio, you hear one of the officers say he doesn't have a pulse. Maybe we should turn him over on his side. Well, Officer Derek Chauvin says, no, we're going to keep him in this position, and continues to keep his knee on his neck for not 1 minute, not 2 minutes, not 3 minutes, not 4 minutes, not 5 minutes, not 6 minutes, not 7 minutes, not 8 minutes, but almost 9 minutes, while George Floyd begged for breath. He begged for air, and they refused to offer him any humanity. That's why we believe it should be first-degree murder, because he was tortured to death.
Benjamin, you and I, well, good morning, first of all, it's Piers here. You and I spoke many times when I was at CNN, and you represented many similar cases, sadly, one of which really stuck in my mind, the Trayvon Martin case. You and I spoke most days in that period. And I really felt that might affect some change, but it didn't. This one, however, to me, globally, feels different. Does it to you?
It does in many respects, and it reminds me of Trayvon, which, as you remember, Piers, because you interviewed his parents many times along with me. It was the #1 news story in 2012, and I think George Floyd's tragic killing is becoming one of those news stories that is going to be historic, especially with the advent of the internet just exploding now. When you have mass protests in London and Paris and Berlin and Australia about this black man in America who was killed by the police, it sends a message that the world is saying enough is enough. No more racism, no more xenophobia, no more colorism. We want equal justice under the law.
What is changing, Benjamin, I think, and I think it is fueled by social media, but the cell phone footage is really beginning to have a huge impact. We had the young man out jogging who was basically hunted down and lynched.
Ahmaud Omar.
We had this appalling case in Central Park of a privileged white woman, you know, trying to tell 911 that there was an African-American man threatening her life when we'd all just seen that he hadn't at all. And then we see George Floyd, which is, I think, of all the appalling things I've ever watched in terms of racial violence, brutality, I have never seen anything that goes on this long that doesn't just have George Floyd begging repeatedly for his life, but has people watching, members of the public filming it on their camera phone.
Begging the police to stop.
Also saying, get off him, he can't breathe. I mean, it is so extraordinarily awful that I think anyone who's watched it does feel this can't go on.
Yeah, I agree, Piers and Susanna. When he was saying, I can't breathe, and you watch this video, I think we all feel like we can't breathe. Anybody who has humanity feels like they can't breathe. And you have to ask yourself, why was it the lay people on the street saying, you're killing him, just take your knee off his neck, and you're killing him? They could see it, but why was it the police couldn't see it? Or was it that they could see it? And that really begs the question when Susanna asked about the first-degree murder charges. But I will say this to our brothers and sisters in London, what black people in America are proclaiming and crying out for is that we don't have two justice systems in America, one for black America and one for white America. We have to have equal justice for the United States of America if we're going to live up to the high ideals of the nation's founders. And that is really at the crux of the matter here.
Benjamin Crump, and I think it's an incredibly powerful point. And my question then relates to that, which is, if this is something that can be caught on camera for the world to witness, what does it say about what isn't being caught on camera? And how have those video images changed things in terms of justice for the black community?
Well, video is a game changer, whether we're for Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia, who we represent, who was shot because of the color of his skin. And as Piers said, it was a modern day lynching, not in 1920, but in 2020. And now with this George Floyd killing that, we all have seen, and we cannot unsee it no matter what we do. And I think that is fueling the change that is necessary. I'm going to be testifying before the United States Congress along with George Floyd's brother, Philonis, on Wednesday morning. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about, the fact that for years, people of color in America have said the police have been brutalizing us or killing us, and nobody would believe us because they always would take the police word as the gospel. But now we have ocular proof on video, and we're saying we cannot have a repeat of Eric Garner, Piers Morgan. As you remember, he was the first person to say, "I can't breathe" in 2020 in New York. And none of those police officers were arrested. Nobody was held accountable. And so that's why everybody is saying this is looking like Eric Garner with the medical examiner's autopsy trying to say that he had an underlying health condition and that might have killed him versus what we saw this police officer with his knee on his neck for 9 minutes did.
Benjamin, you have risen to the very top of your profession. There is a movement now in Minneapolis. The city council overnight has said they want to defund the police. You're a lawman, have been all your adult life. Is it sensible that the consequence of all this is defunding the police, law enforcement?
Well, Piers, it's an innovative thought. I think we have to try new things because if you're a black person in America, the police have protected and served others, but you feel like they only police you in your community. So what can we do to make it where the police is trying to be a community partner versus a community predator to people of color? And I think that's what they're trying to say in Minneapolis. Let's have people who deal with mental health counseling, and so you don't shoot first and ask questions later when it's a black or brown person. And let's try to have police who live in the community that they patrol so they will feel like this person is not a threat. This is my neighbor. And so
we also have to have, Benjamin, don't we? We have to have leadership from the top. I think that President Trump's leadership through this has been appalling. I think it's been incendiary. I think it's made things worse, not better. Continued, as Susanna says, to be divisive. One of the problems, I guess, for the protests, which are huge around the world, is that you're getting millions of people protesting very peacefully, but you're getting a pocket of people at many of these protests. We've had it in London. You certainly had it all around America, who are looting, rioting, fighting, and so on. What do you think of that? Should these peace protests all be completely peaceful, or do you understand why some are feeling so angry that it turns to violence?
Well, I want to be clear on the record, Piers. Many people incorrectly believe that these riots were started by the protesters and the cities burning were started by the protesters. That's not correct. The cities started burning because of police brutality and a racist criminal justice system. And the only way to extinguish these fires is to have police accountability and have equal justice under the law for all Americans.